You walk through your front door, and your eyes start moving before your body does. The dishwasher light is off. There's a package on the counter that's been there since this morning. The dentist appointment you mentioned twice last week still hasn't been booked. You don't say anything. You set your bag down and you start handling it the way you handle it every evening, because handling it has become the first thing you do when you come home. Your spouse is in the next room, relaxed, glad you're back. And in a way you've stopped pointing out. None of it is on their map. The package, the dishwasher, the appointment, none of it registers. They'll ask you later what's for dinner, and you'll already know, because knowing is yours now too. Somewhere along the way, without a fight, without a conversation, without anyone asking for the role, you became the person the household runs through. You probably think it's because you're more responsible, more on top of things, more grown up about the boring parts of adult life. That explanation feels mature. It also lets the household off the hook. But you didn't become the responsible one because you're more capable. You became the responsible one because the household stopped asking your spouse to be. And that kind of change does not announce itself. It gets recorded, one small handoff at a time, in the hidden ledger every house keeps. And this ledger tracks who handles what, who pays the bills, who books the appointments, who knows the child's school login. Each one gets handed to whoever handles it faster, and once it's handed over, it tends to stay there, and the ledger doesn't reset. It grows. You see, a house, like any system, sends every task to whoever can finish it with the least friction. Nobody decides this. It happens the same way water finds the low side of a floor. The first time you paid the electric bill because it was simpler than explaining the login, the routing started. The first time you booked the pediatrician because you already had the number in your phone, the routing kept going. None of those felt like decisions. They were small efficiencies. And small efficiencies repeated for years turn into structure. On your side, the ledger fills with time, mental energy, and the weight of holding 100 small operational facts in your head at once. On your spouse's side, the cost is harder to see. Every domain that leaves their attention takes a small piece of authority with it. Not authority over you, but authority inside their own life. And what they receive in return is ease. Free evenings. The luxury of being surprised by problems only after someone else has already been tracking them. That ease feels harmless while it builds, because nobody gets the bill on the day the responsibility leaves their hands. And that's what makes this easy to miss. Every entry on the tally was reasonable. I'll do it. It's faster. That sentence, said 1,000 times across 7 years, is the whole accounting system. There was never a moment you sat down and decided to become the brain of your household. There was only a string of moments, each one too small to count, that added up to a structure neither of you can see around. In a lot of homes, the pattern starts early. By year 5, it stops feeling like a habit. It feels like infrastructure. On the surface, this looks like an uneven chore split. You do more. They do less. That's the version most couples can name. And it's the version most couples try to fix with a chart on the fridge or a harder conversation on a Sunday night. The chart usually fails, and the conversation usually fades, because both are trying to fix the visible split without touching the thing underneath it. Underneath the surface is the trade. You're trading time for control. Every task you absorb gives you one more piece of the household map. And the map has started to feel like the only thing keeping the place upright. Your spouse is trading say-so for ease. Each of you is being perfectly reasonable, separately, inside the same house. Underneath that is power. The spouse who tracks the household holds the information. The spouse who holds the information makes the decisions. So when your spouse asks you what you both should do about the leaking faucet, the school's new pickup policy, the credit card offer that came in the mail, they're asking the only person in the house who can answer. Doesn't seem like much, right? But it adds up fast. Now, underneath power is fragility. The household has become dependent on one operator. If you get the flu, the week starts to come apart. If you travel for work, things start dropping by Wednesday. If you hit a hard season, a grief, a health scare, a stretch of burnout, the household has no backup. The backup got specialized out of existence years ago. Your stamina is the load-bearing wall, and everything in the house is resting on it. And underneath fragility is something heavier. The marriage has stopped being a place you can fall apart inside of. If you went through something hard right now, a grief, a health scare, a long stretch of burnout, there's nobody in the house carrying enough of the map to hold things together for a month while you recover. The marriage is still a relationship. It's just stopped being a place where you can be carried. And underneath all of it is the deeper thing, which is harder to name. And by the time the tally gets this lopsided, the marriage has stopped asking both people to carry the same kind of adulthood. One person still has to notice, remember, compare, plan, and decide. The other can show up sincerely while carrying less of the map. That's why this can survive inside a loving marriage. It doesn't take cruelty. It only takes a system where one person keeps getting rewarded for catching things before they fall, and the other keeps being spared the cost of not seeing them. You're not carrying more chores than your spouse. You're carrying more of the adulthood the household needs to keep running. And yeah, that's uncomfortable when you see it. Now let me show you what this looks like in numbers. Take a household earning $140,000 a year combined. Mortgage, 2 cars, 1 kid in elementary school. After what they have to pay, no matter what, they have around $1,800 of room each month. On paper, it's a stable middle-class life. On the tally, it's something else. Spouse A handles the bills, the insurance renewals, the kids' medical appointments, the school emails, the car maintenance scheduling, the holiday planning, the family calendar, the taxes, the research before any household repair, and the weekly grocery plan. About 14 hours a week on top of their actual job. Spouse B handles their own job, their own laundry, weekend cooking, and the lawn. About 3 hours a week. Run that gap for 7 years. Spouse A has put in roughly 4,000 more hours of household work than spouse B. At a modest $25 an hour, that's about $100,000 of unpaid behind-the-scenes work sitting on one side of a tally nobody opened. But the hours are not the real damage. The information is. Because after 7 years, spouse A holds almost the entire operating map of the house, the pediatrician's name, the renewal date on the auto policy, the child's shoe size this season. By this point, spouse B cannot simply take back half the work because half the work now lives inside someone else's head. That is the part most couples miss. The imbalance does not become permanent when one person does more. It becomes permanent when the other person stops needing to know. In this household, that moment came around year 3. Spouse B stopped knowing the names of the kids' doctors, not from a lack of care. They no longer needed the information because the household had already placed it somewhere else. After that, the ledger could not be split back up with one conversation. It had to be rebuilt, and rebuilding feels more expensive than running the broken version for 1 more week. So the tally isn't really the 4,000 hours. The tally is the fact that one spouse is now structurally impossible to replace and the other is structurally optional, and neither of them ever sat down and chose that. Once that tally is built, it stops being a workload problem. It becomes the invisible thing controlling almost every visible thing in the marriage. The unopened package on the counter is where the whole balance shows up. The frustration was never about cardboard. The package is the receipt. The frustration is the balance. And the deeper cost is something most people don't catch. It's the loss of standing on the same level. Care starts to flow in the same direction as information. One person notices, prepares, prevents, reminds. The other receives, asks, waits, reacts. Even desire has a harder time surviving in that arrangement, because desire wants 2 adults standing on the same ground, and the tally has already moved them onto different ones. Nobody has to stop loving each other for any of this to happen. That's why the usual fixes feel weirdly weak. A chore chart can split the tasks, but it can't transfer the map. A better conversation can name the frustration, but it can't reinstall 7 years of missing context in one Sunday night. The advice assumes both people are standing in the same room with the same map. They're not. You didn't marry someone who needed managing. You married a person. And then, one small handoff at a time, the household started asking one of you to manage and the other to be managed. The roles you're living inside of now were never chosen. They piled up, and the person you think disappeared may not have disappeared at all. The household simply had stopped asking them to exist. If this gave you a way of seeing things you didn't have before, this is what I do on this channel. I map out the hidden systems shaping your marriage and your money. Most of what's really driving your relationship isn't visible until someone lays it out. That's every video here. Check out my other videos, and I'll see you in the next one.